Hola, Quiles. We're back with an episode of Fullback, which is our weekly podcast on all things Barca or whatever is happening in Barca world that week, where we curate all the top stories that people are talking about or things that people are debating about on social media about Barca. And this week is no different. So this week we've got a bunch of stories that we will try to give our opinion on, viewpoints on, and as usual, we welcome your thoughts as well. And with that, welcome Dom.
Thank you, Dev. Yes, it's been a week of Barca again, and a lot to discuss. I think the Benfica game and all that was the most interesting part of the week, Dev. That was the most thrilling part of the week. And in that game, there are actually several aspects that we can discuss when it comes to Barca tactics, Barca players, Barca problems, Barca success, even. There's a lot in there. And I think you wanted to start with the low block issues, Dev. That's what we talked about, that's what we discussed. And I think this has been a problem for Barca, not just now, but for years, right?
Yours.
The best way to tackle a Barca attack, no matter which players they have, no matter which coach they have, has been the low block, right? That's what teams normally do against Barca. They park the bus, they hit you on the counter, and that's the kind of the winning formula. It's not always a winning formula, but it's the most optimal formula to play against any Barca side, or maybe even any possession-heavy team or team that wants to be a possession-heavy side, because that's how you lull them into these endless passes left and right. And if there's no tempo control or good tempo control, if there's no incisiveness and no intent in the passes, it's very easy to get into that infamous U shape of death that we like to talk about in the tactics world. And that's what sometimes happens to Barcelona. So then let's just kick this off with this low block issue. What are your thoughts? How do you see this issue? How do you see any solution to it?
I feel that the game has evolved so much. Today in La Liga, if you look into the likes of Getafe, Valladolid, Leganes, Osasuna, there are plenty, right? And they all go with a low block when they face Barca. But they have brought an added dimension of counter attacking football to that game, which means the moment they do the block and the moment Barca lose possession, they are on a flash on a counter attack and then they actually score goals. And they often win these games, and we have seen this with Barca 6 times this season in La Liga alone, right? So obviously, people have understood that okay, there's one is obviously thwarting them, cutting their passing lines, squeezing the middle, not letting the passing options be there, so that the forwards can't really make the runs. They're starved of opportunities, and then goals don't happen. So that's one. But at the same time, when Barca commits so many people forward, this is the best time to hit them. Barca, unfortunately, have always struggled with this. For years, we had one answer called Lionel Messi, and he would just score a free kick or whatever, and then that was it. And we scraped by, and we won leagues and we won tournaments. But the problem has always been there. When our forward line works in the sense that when they overwhelm other teams with their speed and the number of people that are committing, Barca can score a goal for sure.
Mhm.
Beyond that, you talk about it corners. Beyond that, you talk cutbacks. Beyond that, you talk set pieces. It's just not good in any other way of breaking these low blocks. And I think these can be coached. We have the best of coaches, best of facilities, and these players play football night and day, right? And we are terrible at set pieces. We're terrible of exploiting that low block to find out solutions. Our solution is that, okay, we'll commit more people or we'll try and unlock that center. In Champions League, teams come to play.
Yeah, that's
They're ready to play. They're ready to take the offensive to you. And that's when Barca thrive. In La Liga, there's nothing like that. They will fight for that 1 point or they'll fight for the 3 point. They don't want to lose to you. So they will go on a block. And Barca has already suffered 6 times. And then there are 6 more games like that coming up. And I don't think Flick has an answer yet to this.
no, it's difficult, and I think I want to go back to what you said. The thing is, with La Liga low blocks, they're extremely disciplined, but they're also extremely tactical, right? People underestimate how difficult it actually is to score goals in La Liga. You see these Premier League games, Bundesliga games, and there's lots of goals, there's lots of entertainment. People say, okay, that's the best league in the world. Okay, fair enough. They do have many high-profile teams that they can make such claims. However, scoring goals against these La Liga sides is so difficult. And players that come from those other leagues and come to La Liga, and coaches that come to La Liga from other leagues, they find this out very quickly. That when you face a Getafe, when you face a Valladolid or whoever you want to name here, they may be sometimes boring and very frustrating, and they have these dark arts, whatever you want to call them. However, they're also very tactical in the way they set up, and they will target your weak areas. They know what to target in your system, especially for Barca, because teams, especially so-called lower league teams, they will prepare extra for that Barcelona game or for a Real Madrid game. They know Barca's coming and we have to be on top of our game. They have the extra motivation, even I would say, and they perform beyond their normal capabilities often. That's number one. So how do we deal with that? And it's not easy. It's not easy. That's number one. You do need sometimes a magician type profile like Messi to actually make that work. You need your Lamines to be on top of the world. And you need to have your almost showing what they can do. And sometimes that is unfortunately the only way to unlock it. However, what people have a misconception about low blocks is they are not unlocked through fancy passing, right? Fancy passing is not necessary to unlock low blocks. What you need is intent in your passing. You need to set the tempo right. The trick to unlock a low block is to create gaps within it, right? There's always has to be space that you can exploit, because if there's no space, there's no way for the ball to go through, actually. It's basic football, right? How do you create space? By moving the players, not moving the ball. That's what the thing that the whole thing about Pep Guardiola, moving the players, right? He has to move the players out of the way for the ball to be able to go through the channel and access the danger areas, right? But that's easier said than done, obviously, especially against a Getafe or someone like that. Now, another way that you mentioned I like very much is set pieces. And Barca do struggle with set pieces. They don't have corner efficiency. They don't have free kick efficiency. And also ball striking. A good shot from outside the box is the best low block killer sometimes, because there's no fancy tactics in that. There's no fancy passing in that. It just hit the ball hard.
Look at Felipe Valverde. He's so good at it. And Madrid wins so many games because he'll just come out of nowhere. There's a goal.
It's a cheat code. It's a cheat code because you don't have to outplay the opposition. You just hit the ball hard. Sometimes that's all it takes for a football match to be won. Hit the ball hard, and if it finds the way into the net, that's you've done your job. And there's no fancy tactics about it either. Maybe there's tactics in creating the space and the separation for that player to be able to hit the ball. Sure, there is that. But often those goals that are low block killers, so to speak, they come from outside the block anyway. So you don't have to go through the block. The ball just has to go over the block and find its way, wiggle its way, maybe past a couple of players, and that's it, right? There's no fancy way of doing it. Sure, some players make it look better than others. Lamin's shots are beautiful, whereas I don't know, Rakitic's shot was just a cannon, right? There's differences in that, but the whole point of it remains the same. And that's it's low tactical effort with not high success rate, but a high chance, I would still say, of actually breaking that block. So there are certain things that you can do to unlock low blocks, but Barca do lack, as you said, they prefer when the opponent comes out to play. Why do we do so well against Madrid? Because Madrid, when they press us, when they try to play, they leave so much space. They're so disjointed. They're very bad at defending that space. And when you give that opportunity to Barcelona, they will absolutely demolish you. That's what happens. Now, that being said, the Benfica game showed us a very bad side of Barca in the first half, but also the second half I felt was really good, because there was a period where Barca pinned down Benfica in their own half and they could not breathe. They could not get out. It was constant wave of attack, and that's where Barca were so laser focused, and that's when the low block can be breached through that intent. See, intensity is not always playing fast on the counter. It can be playing in deeper areas, in congested areas, but playing with intent. And when Barca have that, no low block will actually survive that. It's usually a matter of time. That's why Barca scored 5 goals in that game in the end. So it's difficult.
It's a difficult one, and I don't think Flick has the answer yet to it. And I think that's why he will depend. He will have to depend on the Rafinha's and was to make.
He prefers open warfare. That's what he prefers. He wants open warfare. He likes that.
He likes
Russian. Yeah, he likes the Russian roulette thing. You hurt us, we'll hurt you back, but we'll hurt you more than you hurt us.
The league will be a problem for Barca this season. They're like 10 points behind Madrid as we speak, with 1 game in hand. So possibly against 7 if they win against Valencia. But it's going to be hard because I just don't see Madrid dropping those games against these opponents. They just find a way to win those. Even if they don't play well, they just find a way to win them. And if they just do that, the league's there, which is okay. But I think sooner or later, Flick will have to find the answer to this. When there is plan A is not working, what's plan B? Right now, we are like heavy metal. That's our plan A, and that's our only plan A, and that's about it, which is great because it is huge entertainment and we love it. But we have, and we have seen it multiple times this season, to know that's a serious problem out there, which we don't have ours. The coaches in La Liga will drill their teams to perfection to make that happen. Right? So it's just one of those things, and we'll possibly do a bigger piece on it with more analysis and stats and delve deeper. But in the spirit of going through the process and talking about the other things that happened this week, there are plenty. Araujo, to start with, signed a contract, super happy, but then we realized that he has a release clause of about 65 million, down from 1 billion, which is active in the summer. And then there are discussions around Fatih and Marcus Rashford, possibly something happening. Jose Mourinho wants him in Fenerbahce. Maybe Marcus Rashford comes on the last day of the window, which is very common for Barca to have. At midnight, we'll get to know players coming, and so on. So that was that. And I don't know whether that'll happen or not, but Barca seem like they're okay. They're not really pushing very hard for anybody at this moment, except for the fact that I think that Eric Garcia is staying. Which one will you take? Do you want to take up?
Well, let's start with Araujo, because I think that's the most controversial, the biggest topic of the week was Araujo. And we were all ready for a departure. I think we were all bracing for his exit as the weeks went on. And then all of a sudden, it all flipped in a day, as it normally does for Barca. One day you have the news, okay, he's definitely gone. But then tomorrow, the next day, he's definitely staying. And that's what ended up happening. He signed a new contract and he's apparently staying. But that's, as you said, they have this release clause, which is still on the lower end. Maybe higher end for a defender, but still it's affordable money for teams that have money out there. And there are teams who have...
Premier League teams can easily afford him.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing here. Is Araujo kind of creating the scenario in which his exit would be possible if he so chooses? And then in that case, the question is, if that happens, how much does that actually impact Barcelona, right? Is it the end of the world kind of scenario? Is it the scenario which, okay, we get 65 million, which arguably is more than we would have gotten this winter for him anyway. So is it a scenario in which we actually, leave that transaction being decently happy, Dev, I think?
To me, if you get, and again, I love Araujo, and I've loved him before this, and if he is in the team, that's great. And because things like his duels with Vinny, there are many examples of the good that Araujo brings to the team. An indisputable leader, leads from the front, and you need characters like that in the dressing room. All good. But given Barca's situation, if you get 65 mil for him, minus the 15 million in gross, that's 80 million. You take it and you run. And as simple as that, even if and you find somebody. Because if you think about it, Flick has been quite successful with Inigo and Kubarsi. Now, I think you give them a little bit more reinforcement, and Christensen hardly played. He's actually a good defender. So I think it won't be the end of the world, for sure. But if he stays, which is good. What it does rankle, though, is that he's not. He wants that starting position. And that is why, because he's understood that he might not start every game. And the message that is being sent across is that if I'm not a starter, I'm gone. Mm-hmm. But the point is, he starter material right now for Barca? I would say no. That's just the reality of it as of this moment, because of what we already have. I'm not saying he's a bad defender. Again, he's a great defender. Correct. I think the fact that he has chosen or played that argument and decided that, okay, if this happens, then I'm out. That is a little bit concerning. But apart from that, I think, it's just negotiation. I think Deco played it really well on this one. He got that thing down. He got it to a level where somebody can actually pay for it. And if they do, Barca are not the losing side. Barca actually come out as in a good place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the question then becomes, okay, you lose Araujo and you get the 65 million. What kind of a player do you go for? Because, okay, you lose something by losing Araujo. Obviously, you lose that one. But if he's not fully suited to the system, as we're trying to make that point just now, then obviously you would go for a player, a replacement, and there would have to be some sort of a replacement, I would assume, because depth is obviously a problem. Then you probably don't go for a player that's like Araujo. You go for a player that's on paper more suitable to what we're looking for anyway. So I think in that regard, we're not looking to replace Araujo like for like. We're looking to replace Araujo with someone who's actually a bit
Different.
different than Araujo. Yeah, different than Araujo. And in that sense, that player may be more or less expensive. We don't know who that player is and what kind of player. But I think at the moment, if we're looking at it from a perspective, okay, Araujo wants the starting position, I think the only player that we have to compare him to is actually Inigo, right? Because he's not displacing Kubarsi. Kubarsi is there to stay, right? Kubarsi is the only nailed-on center back in the team currently, which is amazing for such a young player. However, Inigo Araujo is where the friction starts, right? Okay, so who do you need more? Because they're very different players. Because Inigo's strengths are Araujo's weaknesses, and Araujo's strengths are Inigo's weaknesses. And ideally, you would fuse them into one perfect player, but we can't do that, right? Obviously, so it's about picking your poison. Do you go with Inigo, who will obviously give you more attacking contribution and will give you more access to different angles from the left side? He's also a left footer, which is a commodity in center backs as well. So he will give you something that Araujo will absolutely not give you, right? Because Araujo is not proactive in his passing. Araujo is not a problem solver in his passing. And Araujo makes a lot of unforced errors in his passing. All of those things for a Flick side whose foundation is the center back duo is a big problem. However, on the other hand, you have this high line and this space coverage that no one will give you apart from Araujo. Araujo is the only one. But then again, as you said, even in those strengths that he shows, there have been a lot of shaky moments from Araujo. If he's not reading the game properly, if he's only relying purely on his physique to be this dominant force on the pitch, that can be a problem when he meets teams that can either tactically exploit that or who have players who can actually go face to face, go neck with Araujo in terms of speed, strength, and that space coverage and exploiting that space. So I think that's where the problems arise because if you're solely relying on your physical advantage and you're not a thinking player, and Barca players always need to be thinking players, then we have a problem. It's a difficult one for Barcelona, I think. It's difficult conundrum because there's no straightforward answer because these players give you different things. It's all about what do you prioritize more in the system that you employ currently. That's the only thing that you have to look at. Profile fit. Profiles are king in this situation, and profiles will give you the answer to that question. We can't give it. Flick has to decide, okay, I value this more. We can say, okay, we like this player more or that player more, and we have our opinions, obviously, we always do. But Flick needs to decide, I value Inigo's passing over Araujo's physical presence, or maybe I value Araujo's physical presence over Inigo's passing.
I think let's assume worst case scenario he leaves. I think and Barca save about $80 million of profit in financial fair play on just one player. There may be more work going, but let's assume that one. You get a good defender. There are lots of good defenders in La Liga to pair up with Inigo and Kubasi. But then you spend majority of that money, and part of that 1:1 to actually get a Liao or get somebody like that. I think the team becomes much more stronger. So that's on Araujo. Let's get back to the next topic. Let's do Fatih and Rashford. We have talked about Fatih endlessly. Rashford, obviously, frozen out by Ruben Amorim in Manchester United. Sad story. It's like that Aubameyang case, right? Was completely frozen out by Arteta, but came here, had a lease of life, scored a bunch of goals, games, won everybody's heart, and left, right? And Rashford can play that role, I think, very nicely inside, provided there is fair play margin, which currently there isn't because of what Fatih earns. Now, whether Fatih will go or not, he doesn't want to go. Not in this winter. He's willing to wait for the summer, what have you. But yeah, at the present day, present situation, present form, present condition, I think Rashford will add more to the front line than Fatih is doing, and that can be a huge difference in the final run-up that we have to the league, for the league, or for the cups that we are playing for. It can be a big difference.
I agree. It's sad to say that, but at this point, I would take the trade. I would take Rashford and then give Fatih a new chance somewhere else, which hurts me to say out loud, but it's the truth right now because Fatih's not playing, and in the odd occasion that he gets a couple of minutes, he's not really a game changer for Barcelona. Sadly, he is not. And maybe as much as I still have a lot of affection for him, I think maybe it's time to say, okay, maybe it's not happening anymore for Fatih. He is young, but I think a change of scenery would actually help in potentially regaining whatever talent, whatever ability there is, and still in him. And there still is something in that player to be drawn out, especially because he's so young. But the reason we're talking about Fatih again is because his departure is directly connected to Rashford, right? Rashford does not come in without Fatih leaving. That's what the story that's been floating around because of the wages and our financial situation at the moment. And I think if you add a Rashford to this team, and even if he's just a bench option, which I'm sure he would be at first, you get a player that, okay, there are some ifs, and I'll touch upon the ifs, but you get a player that can come on and actually change the game in your favor. He is that good, actually. Rashford is the type of player that can break the game on his own. He's someone who can solve those problems for you. Now, there are a lot of ifs. The first if his mind is actually his head is actually in the game, which has been, if you ask his fans, his club's fans, they will all tell you Rashford is great on this day, but there are days, and there are many of those days, where he just goes around and does his thing, and he can't be bothered that much. And that kind of player is not elite level club player, right? You can't have that player be an important figure at Barcelona. Absolutely cannot. So that's a big if Flick can actually do
Harness
something
him.
to harness that power to actually make Rashford put the work in and effort in all the time, then we're having a player for us. If he cannot, you get a bit part player that's not really what Barca could use, right? And the other part is his laziness. I'm going to put air quotes here because he is lazy. He doesn't like to defend. He has the ability to defend because his physique and his predispositions, he can defend, but he doesn't like to defend, right? So if he comes into this Barca side and you get another, what do we call him? A player who just stands there, right? A player who doesn't want to press highly in a flick system. Again, a big problem because you can't have many of those. We have Lewandowski who can't run. We have midfielders who can cover only small spaces, and we have Rafinha who's very hardworking. But then to put Rashford in, you have to take Rafinha out because you're not taking Lamine out. You're taking Rafinha out. So you lose a hardworking player and you gain someone who's the exact opposite in that regard. So that's the second issue that I have with this transfer. And if those ifs can be corrected, if Rashford presses and if Rashford's head is in the game, then we have a player who actually comes in.
I think he's the 70th minute replacement for Leva. That is what he is. I don't think he's
He can be
anything. So I think that's what they will use him as.
yeah.
Because I don't see anywhere else. Rafinha, you can't bench Rafinha right now. It's impossible. You could bench Lamine for sure, right? So those two are out of the question. So who's left? Leva, right? Leva, I think yes. I think he is already looking to end his chapter with Barca, and it will be a wonderful chapter. It's flown completely under the radar, but I think he's done phenomenally well if you look at his numbers, what he has done for Barca. We'll see if that works out, and there'll be a lot of excitement and gossip around this as the transfer window to close. But I don't think there are any more strong rumors apart from this one. So maybe if it happens, maybe it's only this one or nothing. And we close this window and then we go into the rest of the season with the same team and hopefully we win something. That's about it for this week, guys. This is the top three stories that we thought we would talk about. And obviously, stories keep coming. We have Valencia coming up. We have the game with Atlanta coming up. A lot of stories are going to be rewritten. A lot of excitement. A lot of things to talk about. So please follow us. Give us a share. Critique us when needed. And stay safe. And Visca Barca.